Michael Van Runkle here for hotcars.com. I got the cardigan on because today we're getting fancy with a Lamborghini Urus. This is an insane modern super SUV. 641 horsepower, comfortable seating for 5, and a starting price tag of $218,000. This one's got a sticker of $278, and you can't even get it anywhere near there right now because of dealer markups. It's my first Lamborghini, and it's sort of the ultimate evolution of my own 2006 Porsche Cayenne Turbo. But really, everything you need to know about the Urus starts right here with the wheels and tires. These are massive 22-inch wheels, low-profile Pirelli P0 tires, and the largest set of carbon ceramic brakes ever fitted to a production vehicle. Now, we know tires are obviously the most important part of any car, or at least you should know that if you're reading hotcars.com. But why am I so obsessed with the wheels and tires and brakes on the Lamborghini Urus? I'm gonna walk you through everything about this car and why it all starts here, but for now, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. Let's start with the wheels. These are a striking design, super angular, really in line with the rest of the Urus design. They're 22 inches, which would be absolutely absurd even on an Aventador or Huracan, and makes them insane on a 5-seat SUV. The aggressive swagger of those giant 22-inch wheels definitely continues on the interior. You can see the design is very aggressive and bold, and then you've got the luxury of the red leather seats here. Quilted, of course, front and rear. Very comfortable, big, nice touch screens. And you've got this sort of cockpit of controls, like a fighter jet. You feel that style and luxury. The other day I drove up to Malibu, sweatpants, flip-flops, I definitely felt it when I got out of the car. Of course, the exhaust note helps turn everyone's head because it sounds so damn good. But you're also paying for performance, and that exhaust hints at the 641 horsepower twin-turbo V8 under the hood, but that V8's useless without the wheels and tires. We could talk about a performance SUV all day, but you'll never really understand it until you drive it. So let's fire this thing up. You flip up the little red thing. It's like a fighter jet. Push button start. You hear that exhaust roar. Don't forget to flip that back down. And now there isn't a drive button, so you click on the paddle shifter, puts it into one. I'm in Strata mode, just street, and then you slowly pull away. Now it's got auto stop start to help with the MPGs of this massively powerful V8. So I always turn that off because it just annoys me. And then you get going. I guess we'll stop at a stop sign. Oh, and the seatbelt very gently, very nicely snugs up so you know you're safe. Of course, up here in Malibu, you can sort of decide. Do you want to be in street mode? Do you want to drop it down into sport or Corsa, the most hardcore for track driving? I'll do it a little bit in just street mode to see how it absorbs the bumps, but really, I'm all about dropping it down into sport mode. Changes the steering weight, changes the shift points, and changes the exhaust note. The exhaust note is a serious cue of that 641 horsepower twin turbo 4.0 liter V8, 626 pound-feet of torque. It doesn't need me to shift for it, but I can use those paddle shifters to control that ZF 8-speed. Again, just the best automatic transmission there is. A little smoother than a dual clutch, not quite as fast, but when you've got a car with this much power, you don't really need a dual clutch, and you're blending comfortable in-town driving with canyon driving, with sporty performance driving in something this powerful. Lamborghini says this thing will do a 3.6 seconds 0 to 60. Car and Driver measured it at 3.1. Other outlets have said under 3 seconds. And you definitely don't ever have to worry about not having enough power. We're going uphill here, and I just launched off. No problem. We're down in sport mode, so the engine's staying nice and revved up. It's at about 3,000 RPM. Red line is 7,000, not bad for a big twin turbo V8. But the handling, as much as you love the straight line power, the handling is the important part up here. It's got a full-time all-wheel drive system, no low-range transfer case like my Cayenne, but you don't really need that if you're not taking this thing off-roading. And let's be real, no one's really taking this off-roading. They might see a little snow in Europe, or who knows, unveiled or something. But this is about this kind of performance. You can hear that engine roar. It sounds really good. You got a ton of power, and then brake bite coming into corners, and it's just flat. It's got an adaptive suspension system. So the air suspension that controls the ride height pairs with the shocks and controls side-to-side body lean with, in addition to the air suspension, active sway bars. It's super impressive. You just feel like you're in a supercar up here. Just flat, you just happen to be a little higher off the ground. I've never felt any sort of like dangerous feeling body lean. Like if I drove my Cayenne up here, and I have on these very roads, it gets a lot more lean. Of course, I've got off-roading tires on it now, which sacrifice a little bit of that performance. Without exaggeration, the brakes might just be the #1 best part about the Urus. Actually, strike that. I think the sound system might be. It's one of those sound systems that's so good, you hear new things in songs you've heard 1,000 times. But the brakes, coming into a corner like that, this is a big vehicle, okay? It's high up. Now it's light. One of the reasons it costs more than a Cayenne or an RS Q8 is because Lamborghini adds a bunch of carbon fiber to save weight. It's got a 4,800 pound curb weight, but that's still a lot. And when you put huge carbon ceramic brakes like that on here, man, it doesn't even matter. Coming into a corner like this, I can just slam it. You can hear my stuff sliding around in the back. They've got a ton of bite up here, and it doesn't stop. The only thing I could even call comparable is the Porsche Cayman GT4 RS equipped with the carbon ceramics, and that's a lightweight track toy. This thing is insane. They can almost be too bitey because you're starting to shift your own weight forward, and you've got so much brake grip, it's just wild. I've never experienced anything like it. And they don't also have that sort of need to warm up. They're big enough that in town, even when cold, they've got plenty of grip for city driving, and you don't feel like you need to put more muscle into it at any time. And luckily, this thing has huge high performance tires, so you've got all that bite, and you've still got plenty of grip with the pavement. And you know what that means? We're talking about wheels and tires. The Pirelli P0 tires are critical. They've got a little tread, but not much. Measure 285 at the front and 325 at the rear. And that really paints a picture of the Urus's performance, both in a straight line and up here in the canyons. I always thought my Porsche Cayenne had great brakes, but this thing just takes it to a whole nother level. Then again, I also always thought my Porsche Cayenne had expensive brakes to replace because it has those big 350 millimeter rotors. But this thing, I can't even imagine how much it would cost to replace the carbon ceramic rotors or pads on the Lamborghini Urus. But when you're buying a vehicle this expensive, that's just part of the game. Absurd ownership costs are to be expected. Now up here, we're messing with the 8-speed automatic. I can downshift coming down this hill, so I'm not using the brakes, the awesome brakes, quite as much. And we're currently in sport mode. Why not dip it down into Corsa? Now, the gauge cluster changes a little bit. It's got the RPMs in more of a sporty system. We've got the G meter up, showing me what kind of cornering I'm doing. And then we've got like a little miniature dyno sheet here that shows me my power and torque, which is kind of fun. That all-wheel drive system is complemented by rear-wheel steering, like a Porsche GT3, but it's more advantageous because this is a pretty big vehicle in town. Now, the visibility is surprisingly good, but when you're in a parking lot, it's nice to have that rear axle steering to sort of shrink your turning radius. When you're at higher speeds, the rear axle actually steers along with the front wheels. Counterintuitive, but it helps with stability at high speed. There is sort of a little bit of a detail, and I'm not sure if it's from the rear axle steering or if it's from the adaptive sway bars, but sometimes when you're on a not quite level road, where you're going just a steady speed and you're going straight right here, it just gets this little wiggle. It's like a little shimmy. And I think it's just trying to correct itself and keep itself level, but I noticed it. I had a friend in the passenger seat the other day and asked him if he could feel it, and he couldn't. So maybe that's just me being a little oversensitive. Oh, we're in Corsa mode now. I think the exhaust is opened up just onto another level again. Oh, it sounds so good. I mean, how can they make that happen? It's a twin turbo V8, so you'd expect that sort of muffled turbo noise. No turbo spool whine, but also no muffled noise, and it just sort of burbles. It burbles when you upshift, it burbles when you downshift when you're in sport or Corsa. If you're in just strata mode, it only burbles a little bit because you're trying to be respectful of your neighbors who live in incredible palaces here in Malibu and don't want to wake up to the loud sound of your Lamborghini Urus. Turn off onto a windy road here. So, you know, maybe I'll see this is a little bit of a rougher road. I could put it into Sabia mode, which I believe is sand. And so we're lifting up here. I can feel it noticeably. It's a few inches at least between all the different ride heights. So you can put it in Sabia mode. That keeps you revved up nice and high, because in sand, you want to be revved up nice and high. You don't want to have all of a sudden a bunch of shifts that are causing momentary breaks in traction. It's still pretty impressive up here at the higher ride height. Now the interesting part is, with air suspension, it's a little counterintuitive. You would think you want it as low as possible to keep the center of balance better when you're doing sporty driving. But when you put the air suspension low, the bags actually get softer. So that can create more body roll. Now Lamborghini, I think, counteracts that with shocks and with the adaptive sway bar tuning. So it doesn't really happen here in the Urus like it does in my Cayenne, which has more different adjustable settings because you control the shocks separately from the air suspension, lift, ride height, and from the four-wheel drive settings. In this, you just have Strata, Sport, Corsa, Sabia, Terra, and Neve, which I think is snow. And then you can also set your own Ego mode here, which is kind of a funny name, given that we're talking about a $300,000 plus vehicle. But you can put it in Ego mode and then use these buttons to control the drivetrain. So your power, your exhaust, your shift points, the steering weight, and the shock height. But the shock button doesn't allow you to control ride height versus shock stiffness like you can on my 2006 Cayenne. But Lamborghini probably just expects you, if you're buying this car, to trust what they're up to more than what you might want to tune. So in reality, I'm really using these buttons more. And it's kind of fun to flip through. The controls take a little bit of getting used to, but once you get used to it, it's pretty nice. I'm not going absolutely balls to the wall. I'm just keeping the sound a little bit better for the camera, of course. This is a public road, and the truth is that this Urus has way more power than you could ever safely unleash on a public road. But even considering that, it's really more about the handling. Coming out of the corner, you can totally floor it, and you feel confident. You got the all-wheel drive grip, you've got a ton of power, you've got minimal body roll. It just all combines into a stunning drive. I'd really love to test out the Audi RS Q8 and the Porsche Turbo GT to see how they compare, because the pricing on this is over the top, just like everything else. Dealer markups, my friend who works at DuPont Registry told me they're selling these 100 over sticker all day. That's ridiculous. So $278 for this one, which has a lot of features, but no ventilated seats, great sound system, the off-road air ride height settings. So add 100 grand onto that, $378 or so. And it's absolutely mind-blowing that I see a ton of these in West LA. I literally saw 3 this morning driving to Malibu from Santa Monica at like 7 in the morning. 3 Uruses. And Lamborghini, a full year ago almost, announced they'd already sold 15,000 of these things. So there is a certain extent to which the sense of specialness of a Lamborghini sort of goes out the window when you start seeing these more. So I believe Lamborghini has been purposefully throttling production, which creates scarcity and allows those dealers to then charge $100,000 markups on a super SUV like this. Now, Whether you can get a Porsche Turbo GT or an RS Q8 without dealer markups, also dubious given the state of the new car market, where MSRPs really seem to have nothing to do with sale prices. At the end of the day though, if you want the Lamborghini and you got the money to spend, you're buying the Lamborghini for the style, for the excess, and for all of the creature comforts. The sound system, absolutely spectacular. All the little drive modes. These controls make you feel like you're in a fighter jet. It's Top Gun all over the place, and you can go get your G's all over the place. What percentage of Lamborghini drivers are actually gonna find the edge of traction in their $300,000, $350,000, $380,000 super SUV? Not many, but it's nice to know it's there. It's really just the perfect amount of power. It's just enough to get in trouble. And in an era when electric vehicles have really ruined acceleration, this thing still got it. The on-road performance is absolutely absurd, and I mean that in the best way possible. I'd love to see someone put smaller wheels and knobby tires on one of those. You would be limited, of course, because the brakes and rotors are so big, so you could probably only do like 20-inch wheels at the smallest. But that would be kind of fun. And actually, I'd love to take this thing off-road. I didn't really do it because I didn't want to be that guy that blows a tire out on an Urus and gets into a little bit of trouble. The on-road performance, though, it's crazy how they're able to basically take a supercar and make it taller. It should be nose heavy. You don't feel that. It should have body roll. You don't feel that. And you shouldn't be able to just blast off because it should be too heavy to be this fast, and you don't feel that at all. It's absolutely over the top, absurd, awesome level, and I'm sort of understanding how Lamborghini was able to convince themselves to build this, even if it does sort of probably detract from the customer base of the Aventador and Huracan. Everything about the Lamborghini Urus is over the top and excessive, but I got to admit, I kind of enjoyed driving it. From pulling up somewhere in sweatpants and flip-flops to the very comfortable interior, all the power in the world, really just the perfect amount of power for a super SUV, and then fiddling with all the drive modes to dial it in up here in the canyons. Plus, you can even double down, go even more insane, and get it with 23s. I hope you learned something watching this video today, and that I was able to convey why the wheels, tires, and brakes are just a microcosm for everything good, bad, and ugly about the Lamborghini Urus. If you did, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us beat the algorithm. Thanks.